Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I'm your host, Derek Duker. Today's conversation is with Stacey Tilley. She owns her own business called DesertZen, which offers guided meditation, sound bowl therapy, and much more. She has been volunteering her time with the Sunrise Project, which is operated by the Graham County Substance Abuse Coalition in Arizona, and it supports individuals facing re-entry. As an advocate for meditation for self-care and as a coping strategy, I was very interested in talking with her. Here is my conversation now with Stacey Tilley. I know last time we talked, you mentioned, if you will, that you had some scars to talk about and how that's led you to the work that you do now. So we can go ahead and just get started into that if you want. How did you wind up in this line of work, and what brought about the passion for it?
So I got into this work at a retreat, a spiritual retreat that I went to in New Jersey. And what led me to that was my childhood trauma. So I went through sexual abuse by my father from age 3 to 13. And then I moved across the country at that age. And then I ended up in Arizona. Then I kind of went into I think my subconscious really blocked all of that out. And I went into a spiral as a teenager, and I started with drugs and alcohol at 14, which also then led me to being raped a few times as a teenager. I put myself into dangerous situations, I think, because I was trying to search what was wrong with me and why I felt the way I did. And I was just really trying to find my path. And I thought that was the way to do it. And so I dove deep into some drug use at a very young age. And that continued on. I ended up having some teen pregnancies starting at age 16, which was also from, drug use, just being extremely careless, and how it is when you're a teenager, but also a traumatized teenager is like a whole lot worse, and not really understanding why I had the behaviors that I did, nor wanting to speak out about it. So that continued into some very seriously abusive relationships that I went in, like with my kids' father, and being in that abusive situation led into more drugs after that one ended. And I got a little heavier into it, and just trying to mask it and trying to cover it and numb everything and things that were trying to come to the surface. So that kind of went on until I ended up into some criminal behavior, and I ended up arrested. That kind of put a halt on my drug use, though, because that was enough for me. And that was in 2001. So, and I have actually been sober since then. So,
wow, congrats.
Thank you. And from there, I still had the behaviors that I never truly understood. And I just kind of went about life, honestly. And then it was just more and more struggle, more and more things. And I took up drinking, and I started drinking because I was just trying to, again, find out what was going on with me, or things were starting to surface. And I was like, no, let's drink it away. And then that's when I came across this group of friends on Facebook, and they were doing a spiritual retreat. And so at that point, I had tried so many things. I had tried therapy. I had tried going to church. I had tried meetings, all those things. Nothing was really resonating with me because it wasn't fixing what was in here and what was buried so deep. And so I went to this retreat, and that's when I discovered sound therapy and meditation. We had like a 4-day long retreat, and we sat and did rigorous, amounts of meditation. And it was the day of the sound therapy when it really, really hit. So they had us, laying down doing our meditation, and it was about inner child wounds. I knew going into it that there was something, but at that point in my life, because this was years later, probably about over 20 years later, And I knew there was something, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to find out. So I was kind of going in it blind. And then through the sound therapy, which they had like the singing bowls and chimes, but also our own voice, which was super powerful. They had us do some chanting and stuff. And that's what got us into the meditation, to where I was able to be brought to a place of my deepest trauma, which was equally horrific, but very eye-opening at the same time. And I really accredit it all to the sound therapy, because once I got to that dark spot in that meditation, the next series of the sounds were intended to start healing that and to start processing it and to calm that the nervous system frequency, and bring me back to a place of, at least a little bit of peace, because I was coming out of that meditation not really okay. And it was very, very difficult to see the things that I saw, which is, the things that my father had been doing to me from a very young age, like I said, at 3 years old. And being able to learn those things just through that power of sound and my own sound was so profound to me that when I fully came out of it, I was able to understand myself for the first time. I didn't feel good. I'm not saying like I was just like, oh, I'm cured and everything's gone. But like, I, for the first time, understood some of my behavior, and it made sense of all the things that I had been doing over these past 20 something years, and, towards men and relationships and the drug use. And so in that one little 30-minute session, I changed the entire course of my life. And that is what led me into research and, these few years later, wanting to provide those services myself for others and give them that opportunity to maybe get, some of that clarity in their life and move forward from things they've been through.
So how long have you been working at the Sunrise program, and can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so the Sunrise program is, honestly, I've been friends with Kristen, the director of it. I've been friends with her for a really long time. We worked together probably about 15 years ago or so in a salon setting. And so I had seen her posting pictures online of the things that she was doing with the program. It's like a reentry program. All pathways to recovery is what we really strive to push. And like, she wanted to do something different here. So they bring in people, coming from out of rehabs, prisons, incarceration, some even, just off the streets that are looking for an alternative and something, maybe AA didn't work for them. Maybe, religion didn't work for them. Maybe, and we do like, we'll have motivational speakers one week. We'll have myself, I come and do the sound therapy and meditation, other people speaking on their experience. It's just, it's a completely different program, and they're actually able to, like, working through the courts, get help with their reducing sentences sometimes, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so when I seen her posting and I saw, it was just very inspiring to me. And then obviously I've known her, so I kind of reached out and I was like, hey, I do these little retreats because I have a business called DesertZen, and I do little mini retreats out in our local mountain up here. People sign up and we come out and do little healing retreats for a day, just like a couple hours, and do a whole little session with them. And so I offered that to her. I was like, hey, I would like to offer that, to the group. I feel like that might be something they could benefit from. Let's try it. And so that's kind of how that got started back in August or September, I think is when that started. So not even quite a year.
Forgot to have a little bit of coffee before we hopped on. I didn't do the math right. How long have you been meditating for?
I started at the retreat probably about, it was 2021.
Okay. So yeah, about 4 years. That's right around the time that I started as well. It was somewhere, I think in 2020 is when my friend introduced it to me, but I don't have a whole lot of, I kind of have an idea about what sound healing is, but what's that process like? How do you get started? And is that something that you have to do with like a leader, or is it something that you can do on your own?
So I honestly did it on my own. I have seen where you can go get certificates and stuff. However, I just really feel very in tune with I just get in tune with the universe. Pray still. I am not religious per se, but more spiritual side of things. I work with a lot of my own energy and I'm like really pick up on that. So that's kind of what the sound therapy does. And because the instruments and things that we use are sound bowls. I have singing bowls and they're made out of quartz crystal. And each bowl is set to in tune to a different frequency. And those frequencies work with the vibrations of your body. And so certain points of that body, when you hit that bowl or, play that bowl, are going to emit that frequency out and trigger that part of that person's frequency.
Yeah, I think I worded that incorrectly. I meant more so for the practice. Is it something like I could go do by myself or?
Yes. So like for me, I'm more of a like kind of an on my own thing, especially if it's something that you can do on your own. I just really looked into researching like what the sound therapy was, how it worked. And then honestly, I watched a whole bunch of like YouTube videos of people playing and just watched their flow and how they did it. And then when I now sit down to play, I just, I purchased myself a set of bowls and I just started playing and I just really let my own energy guide me to which one, and how to play. The physical side of actually playing it is relatively simple. It's not like you have to go get guitar lessons or something. It's right. Essentially, it looks like you're just dinging a bowl and then running the mallet around it. But for me, it's not deeper than that,
Right.
But yeah, you could totally do that.
Yeah, as much as it's, meditation's not just sitting there with your eyes closed. It's definitely healing, and there's a lot going on under the surface there. How have the people at the Sunrise program, how have they taken to meditation and the sound bowls?
They absolutely love it. They look forward every time they know that it's my turn for the meeting. They're like, yes. At first, I did notice like there's a small, portion of them that people are skeptical, of course, at first, because it's a lot of people think of it as like woo woo and, like all these things. And until that's what I like to do. Instead of like starting the class where they're in the chairs or up, I started on the ground because I feel like I'm sitting on the ground with them and we're more eye level and it's a little more personal. And so it gets a little more, I feel like they're able to open up. They have a little more comfort because you're kind of down at there, sitting down together. It's a little more intimate. Some of them, like I said, were skeptical in the beginning and they were just, not really getting fully into the meditation, just kind of sitting there going through it. But little do they know they're still getting that, frequency and stuff set out to them. So ever since then, though, from the first time that I did it until now, or just recent when we did a couple of weeks ago, I have seen those that were skeptical are those that are the most interested now. And they're the ones that like now have an easier time sharing their stories. They have an easier time speaking and feeling comfortable with that. I give them a time afterwards to share if they want what they maybe experienced during their meditation. And if they don't, it's, like that's never forced. But those that would always be like, just kind of sit there and now they're like, I'll share. And that's huge. That's very huge, to help them get their voice, at least, even at the very least, and bringing those things to the forefront.
How do you explain to them how meditation helps? Because recently I've been volunteering at NAMI here in Springfield, Missouri, and I have a different type of group. I have homeless individuals that come in mostly. For them, it's really hard to explain to them how meditation is going to help them because they lack housing, which really shakes you to your core. And so your perspective's not the same. But what do you tell the people at the Sunrise program how meditation is going to help them get from where they are now to the life that they want to live?
So the very first thing I tell them is that it can calm the chaos in their mind. It gives them that moment, even if it's just for that 30 minutes, to calm the mind and to take all the chaos and be able to set it aside for a second, just for those few minutes even, and focus on yourself and focusing on something else, or maybe taking the chaos and being able to pick something out of it, pull it to the forefront and work through that portion. Because once you've worked through that portion, you can throw it away and you can get rid of it. And then you still got this chaos mess. Yes, it's not one session fix all, and so I tell them, like just being open to listening to your mind and being able to take them to that place of, calm and quiet and break that chaos that goes constantly in your mind. Your brain is just constant chaos when you're in those situations. And I feel like that's where the, addiction and stuff comes in, because it's what quiets the mind, quiets that chaos for a moment. So it's just an alternative. I've also explained to them, and I share them my story, like where I came from of my chaos and not understanding things, and being able to get that understanding just through my own mind is life-changing. Because if you can get some understanding of your own self and your own behaviors, how could you ever go back to it, because then you're like, oh gosh, you can recognize it so much easier.
Something that I've been trying to tell them is, like, especially for the homeless folks that come in, it seems like they have like a definition of themselves that's not correct. They're really down on themselves a lot of the times. I have one attendee that talks about how he knows that he's self-sabotaging a lot of times, but he points at narratives of the world, like, that they're keeping the next step on the ladder, they keep moving it higher so he can't reach it. And I definitely get that feeling myself. I've struggled to find work for myself as well. And so I totally get where he's coming from, but if you're able to drop that narrative that you're not going to be able to accomplish what you're setting out to do, and not view every setback as like a learning opportunity, then you're never really going to get there, because progress isn't a straight line forward. There's a lot of zigs and zags in there. And so if you're able to quiet the mind, like you're talking about, I talk a lot about like responding versus reacting to situations. And I feel like meditation gives you that brief moment where you're able to, I don't know, it's almost surreal in a sense. Like back then, I would just react and just like get angry or do whatever. And now it's like something happens and there's this like infinite weird pause in between what. Yeah.
You can get that pause because you can like identify. And a lot of times when I do the meditations, I have it like themed, like, okay, today we're going to work through, having some self-reflection, let's just say having some self-reflection and, like the self-sabotage that you speak of, and being able to get them in that quiet that mind. Okay, let's go into the chaos. Let's find that self-sabotage. We're going to pull that right here. And we're going to figure out and go into a place to figure out, why do I do this? And it might be brutal and it might be awful. And once you discover and find out why, but being able to confront that in your mind and visually, get them to the place where they can visually see where that stems from. And then you can identify it easier. Therefore, when you come out, those triggers no longer become triggers. It'll be a trigger, but then you're like, aha, wait, I remember. And like you said, that reaction, you get that chance to have that pause before you actually react.
This episode of the Show My Scars podcast is brought to you by Two Oddballs Creative. If you want to be a respected and preferred business in your neighborhood, and if you want to keep up a neighborhood worth doing business in, continuous community relations is a must. What a business brings to the city and the surrounding area is becoming more and more important to consumers, and they're using that as a factor in their purchasing decisions. Whether it's money or time that you put into the community, your work will benefit your business too. Plus, it just feels good to give back. If you need help with your community relations, you can trust the Oddballs. They have a team of PR rock stars, and they have past journalism experience. They can match you with a local nonprofit or cause that matches your organization's values. You can reach them at 2oddballs.com. That's the number 2oddballs.com, or you can call them at 417-986-6332. Going back to when you first went on that retreat, you talk about this, point that you got to where you were like, I had tried everything and so what, this sounds woo woo, I'm going to try it anyway. I kind of got to that same point. I think part of it comes from, I have some friends who, not that they don't suffer, everybody suffers, but I think they would readily admit that they hadn't experienced as much trauma as, somebody that might be facing reentry or something like that. But they have told me themselves, like, I don't want to sit with my thoughts. And I do get it in one point, like my thoughts are what scare me the most. So right. I do get that they're afraid to confront their thoughts, but at the same time, I don't, because I'm like, I'm giving you the opportunity to like lessen the volume at least. I still have automatic negative thoughts every day, like all the time. Oh, and yeah, they don't feel like a gunshot wound to the chest anymore. It's like, I have them, I'm able to hold them up to the light. Is that true? Or is that helpful? Things that you learn in therapy. Right. But have you experienced that? Have you experienced like some pushback, is, not so much as they don't believe it's going to work, but that they're kind of fearful of either meditation or the sound bowls?
Yes. And I do believe that that's why they struggle. Some of them, they don't get down on the mat and close their eyes. They'll just, kind of sit there and like, kind of, they're listening. I know you're listening. Just because you're scrolling on your phone during it doesn't mean you're not listening, because I know that's triggering something in there. Those people that started off like that now sit on the floor and they get into meditation, or they come to me privately, because I do this also, privately. I have a room at my little salon that I do some private sessions with. So they've reached out privately to, which, sometimes some of these subjects should be private, some of it. I always, make sure and let them know, that at the end of it, I try to bring them to a more positive place, because you don't want to just leave them like, like at the end of my meditation, for example, I was brought to the forefront. I was, being sexually molested by my father at a very young age. And had it just ended, it would have been like, whoa. And so bringing them back down, okay, we're back here. We're in this room. You're safe, and that's no longer happening to you. And then just kind of giving them that understanding of, it's like watching a movie of your life playing backwards, and that's huge. It's very powerful to be able to do that. And I know like some people, they want to skip over certain parts and let's fast forward through that part, and it's just time, honestly, time, coming consistently, doing the meditations consistently. And then they start becoming more open, because then they start feeling different things and they can't deny it anymore, and just like, you and I'm sure you went through that too. We're like, okay, well, because I know like the first few times I'm like, I can't get anywhere because I can't shut my mind down. But really, I was getting everywhere I needed to be. Just because my mind wasn't quiet during the meditation didn't mean that my spirit wasn't, and my energy was still getting something out of that.
Yeah, I think the intention that you come to meditation with is important as well, because early on, I was struggling so bad, and I quit for a little bit because I thought that the whole point of it was to not have thoughts, and that's impossible as a human. Like, you want to just constantly redirect from your thoughts back to whatever it was you're focusing on, whether it be your breath or sounds or, focusing on something during walking meditation, I was definitely sitting down. I'm like, I'm not going to have thoughts and I'm going to feel better. And one of the attendees caught something that I said. I didn't realize that was profound at all. It's just something that I happen to write every time I sit down and write out a meditation that I want to give. I tell them, if you find yourself lost in thought, take your attention back to your breath without judgment. And he was like, oh my God, that without judgment part. He was like, I have been meditating for a little bit over a year now, and I struggle to stay consistent because I keep thinking. And he said, like, when you said that you're not going to be able to stop having thoughts, like, and that if you just redirect without judgment, he was like, that let me off the hook. And I felt so much better. I'm like, yeah, it's noticing the thoughts and it's being able to realize where your attention lies, because that's going to be so important for you moving forward, and being able to apply what you learn in therapy to your life. But something I wanted to ask you, you talked about the consistency aspect of it. How do you remain consistent yourself? Because even I, like, meditating for 5 years, there's been like, I hate to say it, but there's definitely been like whole months have passed without me meditating before.
So I don't feel like that's a bad thing. And the reason I feel that is because I used to beat myself up over it. I'd be like, man, I haven't done anything for a month. I'm like, okay, well, those thoughts are also my self-sabotage. Those are also my bad thoughts. Like, it's okay that you didn't for a month, because for me, I feel like you're working through meditation and doing all this every day, right? Or, even twice a week, or even however often you decide that you are doing it. Well, you've brought so much to the front and so much out that sometimes your body and your energy just needs that pause. It needs to take that moment to have a break, because I feel like that's like taking that time to process, because just because you're in meditation and bring it to the forefront and able to quiet that part of the mind, your human and awake part still needs to process that. Because for myself, I'm super good at blocking. Unfortunately, as a child, I learned real young how to block everything. So I caught myself a few times in meditation having those thoughts, which, just to touch back real quick, what you were saying about coming back to your thoughts without judgment. I am similar in the sense of, but I sometimes will listen harder instead of I'll go to my breath, but I'll listen harder, because the thought that's the loudest is probably what I need to be focusing on right now, and then being able to move forward. And so, like, all those things, it requires me to take that pause, or even redirecting my meditation into just breath work, into just something, just to bring that peace so I can work through what I just went through in my meditations, and being able to, like, process that actually and release it and get rid of it. So that way, when you go back, that thought no longer comes during your meditation.
Yeah, I think it's able to help you filter out what's important and what's not a lot of times, because our lives are so filled with distractions, and especially these days, that sometimes it's amazing how I can get caught up in some weird narrative that the world's giving me, instead of, the other day I was on my own case about where I'm at with, my career and all these things. And I didn't realize I'm like, dude, you've been getting your meditation teaching certificate. You've been, volunteering and getting your community service hours for that certificate. And you're only, like, as of today, I think I'm like 4 or 5 weeks away from getting it. And I'm like, why was I so down on myself the other day, being this close to achieving one of my goals? And I don't think that I would have caught that years before without meditation.
I also feel like for addicts, we're used to instant gratification. We're used to, having an issue, our mind's going crazy. So let's take a hit, or let's do this, and it's instant gratification. It instantly goes away. And so that's why with meditation, it's a little harder. And so you get a little discouraged because it's not necessarily just instant, and that is where I had to really learn, like, okay, just because I didn't sit here for 30 minutes in a meditation and open my eyes and my life is cured, I had to realize, okay, well, now I have to process all of that in the awake sense, and like being fully aware of what I just worked through. Now let's work through it, let's work through it. Let's do, what do I need to do to change this? What do I need to do, as or moving forward, or, depending on whatever you just meditated about. And that's where is a hard line of that. We're so used to instant gratification, like I said.
Is there any stories that you've heard from some of your attendees that you're able to share, maybe without using names or anything? But I mean, you gave us an incredible testimony yourself, like where you've come from and everything. But what about people who have attended the Sunrise program and done your meditations and sound bowls?
I did a meditation. It was a little private session that we did, and we did a river. So I had her, get in a boat. Let's float down a river, and we're gonna make stops along the riverbank. And each stop is going to represent, a certain stage of your life. And so we stopped at the point of addiction. And let's get out of the boat. Get out of the boat, get on the shore, and tell me how that feels. And she was able to talk to me. And then our next step, was like holding on to the guilt from our addictions and getting out of the boat. And there's your family, there's your children. Your children are on the shore. You're not going to speak to them. It's just only holding space for them. She came out of it. Obviously, she was very distraught a little bit and crying, but she told me that that was the first time that she felt like she could forgive herself for the things that she had put her children through, because she was able to sit there, look them in the face without words, and apologize to them, and even getting her own forgiveness and holding space for how they felt towards all her years of, neglect that she had put them through, and, being incarcerated and those kind of things. And she was able to finally, she said, I can finally forgive myself. That wasn't the true me that was putting them through that. That was the addiction, and that was my, trauma and past things that she had been through. And so just taking her, being able to take her to that place and not have to, because sometimes it's hard to face people one-on-one, that you've hurt, and that especially those that still hold that guilt towards you and still hold that anger towards you for it. And, sometimes it's not easy to sit down and have those conversations without it being combative. And, addicts, we don't do real well with, we kind of get defensive, but being able to actually sit with her children in silence and knowing that she could, find that forgiveness for herself. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. So you're more of a partner with the Sunrise program, or do you have a official position with them?
No, I just mostly volunteer. We're, moving forward and stuff. We're getting ready to take our sessions and stuff into the actual prisons here in the September 19th. So we're trying to, move a little forward. So I'll be a little bit more involved and more actually part of the program. But I just simply just wanted to volunteer my time because I'm so passionate about it and how much it has helped me in my life. And I just really wanted to offer that to other people because I just have a huge passion to help.
What was it like getting, setting up your own practice though? That's something that, I haven't decided how I want to use my certificate.
I kind of just jumped, man. Like I got my sound bowls. I had been really just contemplating, sitting with myself, brainstorming, writing notes, like what do I want to bring here? And I started it off like in town. We're a small town, so we don't have a lot of like sober activities for one. All the time it's like, like those paint and sip nights where they go paint canvas and drink. I don't like to do that because I don't want to drink. I'm okay now. Like I'm not like triggered by that anymore. However, I just don't choose to, put myself in those environments. And So that's kind of how I geared it at the beginning. I was like, okay, I want to bring something like an activity, almost like date nights or, girls' night out type things and so I offered where they come and they do a craft and they're sober events. Like I don't allow substance, things at my events, drinking, any of that. That's in my, advertising. I've been slacking a little bit, but I was doing it like once a month or every 2 months. I would just advertise a session where I go into the forest and whoever wants to sign up and they pay for their ticket and they come and they get a craft and I gear everything towards one theme. So we'll do like a craft together and then I provide them with a meal and then we go into either some sort of physical activity, get that blood flowing and the heart pumping right before we go into meditation. And because it kind of gets your energy flowing and get that flow and everything. And then I have them sit down, we do the meditation and sound bath. And that's kind of how I started it. And then, which goes very well. And that's open to the public, when people just randomly sign up. I've had groups from anywhere from like 8, 9 people all the way up to 25 that have come and shown up. And just keeping it kind of was low key for a little bit, but now it's kind of starting to grow. And then like I said, I saw the Sunrise program, what they had been doing. And so I was like, you know what? I just felt very compelled to reach out. I'm like, I just really feel like I want to offer this. And like, I think it would be good. And would you be interested in trying it out? And it ends up being like almost one of their favorite nights on the meeting. So
yeah, it must be really fulfilling. What has it been like for you to look back and see where you come from to now being a business owner and then giving back to something that you went through and you were able to help a group of people coming from a similar place as to where you came from?
Honestly, I'm gonna cry. It's really humbling. And I feel absolutely so grateful to be able to just see the light come on in their eyes. Even just simply that, even if they don't share, you get to see the light turn on. And that is my purpose, is to just be able to show people that they're not by themselves, they're not alone, that there is other ways, and that it's their star shining right inside of them. And just helping them bring that out. It has been extremely humbling. And, hearing the stories and knowing that I wasn't alone either. And that's pretty much I'm extremely grateful and blessed to be able to do that. And looking back, I'm like, dang, whew, like, taking a deep breath, like, wow, whew, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I appreciate you. I know I've never met you in person or anything like that, but I appreciate you being another person out there that's, sometimes like it kind of feels like I do a bunch of like alien designs or whatever. If I don't have a picture of the person that I'm interviewing, or if I do a solo pod, I always use like alien graphics because that's kind of how I felt for a long time. I felt like I came from somewhere else and I was speaking a different language and thinking, oh, that's awesome. Yeah. For those who can't see, she's got an alien tattoo on her arm. That's awesome. But yeah, that's how I felt. And so doing what I do now, I'm able to meet many more like-minded people. And
yeah, it's a collective. Mm-hmm. I feel like the more awake you become and the more that light comes on, the more those types of individuals gravitate into your life. And this is no coincidence that you and I were able to do this, because it's huge. And to share real quick, just because when I didn't know when we first spoke that until you said that you were in Missouri, and it didn't click in my brain at all until about 2 days after. I was like, whoa, this isn't a coincidence, because ironically, that's where my father, my abuser, lives. And so I was like, wow, I get to speak my story
that's crazy
out loud. So that was kind of huge for me, and I don't feel like anything's a coincidence.
So how do folks get in touch with you and DesertZen, and if anybody's interested, the Sunrise program?
The Sunrise program, we do have Facebook page, right, to get in touch with them. It's just Sunrise program on Facebook. And then I have also a Facebook page, DesertZen, as well. So that's just my business page, just messages or whatever. If anybody wants any questions, I've also done, some Zoom video chats, whatever, just anything like that, I'm here for it. I feel like I never really had that. And so I want to be that, even if it's just that little beacon of light, and sometimes it's just a conversation like that, like this, just a conversation that can turn that light switch on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving people another voice to hear about meditation instead of mine. I'm sure they're tired of hearing me bring that up all the time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Like, I'm grateful for this, like really, truly grateful.